Welcome to this event co-sponsored by the Library of Congress African and Middle Eastern Division with Howard University's Center for African Studies and Africa Access. My name is Dr. Edward Miner, and I am head of the African section. Founded in 1960, the African section is the focal point providing reference and research services to Congress and the American people around the library's vast Africana collections. Our panel discussion today, Navigating Society, Challenges and Female Agency in Africana Children's Literature, features authors of three winners of the 2021 Children's Africana Book Awards, or CABA. For more than a decade, the library and CABA have partnered to engage new CABA authors in conversation around their creative process and emerging authorial identities. It is my pleasure to now introduce my esteemed colleague and moderator for this panel, Laverne Page, Africa Area Specialist in the African section, who will preface the main program with a brief overview of Africana children's literature resources at the Library of Congress. Over to you, Laverne.
Hello, good afternoon. I also would like to welcome you. My name is Laverne Page. I'm an area specialist in the African section of the African and Middle Eastern Division at the Library of Congress, and my job focuses on reference services and collections development for Africa. I'm one of the moderators of our program today. I'd like to take a moment to tell you something about the Library of Congress and its children's literature collection and services relating to children. As I've stated, I'm a reference librarian for African studies. I periodically answer questions relating to African children's literature. A good basic resource for reference services is our African section reference collection, which is located in the African and Middle Eastern Division Reading Room. It's a good source for bibliographic material on Africana children's literature. In total, the Library of Congress holds around 600,000 children's books and periodicals, maps, visual and audio media, and secondary material. Most children's books are held in the library's general collections and include fiction, poetry, folklore, mainly in Latin script. However, as with other genres of material at the library, we collect in all languages and scripts, children's material in all languages and scripts. So the Library of Congress has two reading rooms devoted to children and several specialty services. So here I'll show you a few slides. The first is a slide of the Children's Literature Center. I'm sorry, but this is a slide of the Children's Literature Center, which was opened by a congressional mandate in 1963 to be staffed by children's literature specialists to serve students, teachers, librarians, parents, publishers, and others who study children. This second slide is a photograph taken in the Library of Congress in the Young Readers Center. This is a reading room where children, teens, their families, and school groups are invited to read together and to participate in hands-on activities related to the Library of Congress and its collections. This photo was taken in 2018 at a CABA event. Pictured are LC staff members, Monica Valentine, who works in the Young Readers Center, and Leanne Potter, the library's Director of Educational Outreach. We have CABA winners, the author Atinuke and illustrator Angela Brooksbank. And Brenda Randolph, she's in the orange jacket on the end to your right. And Brenda is the lady behind the CABA Award and Africa Access. Brenda is the head of Howard University's Center for African Studies Outreach. And for years, she has coordinated programs between the Young Readers Center and CABA. The next slide. In the next slide, we are introducing you to the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. This is Jason Reynolds, the ambassador for 2020-21, and he is the 7th writer to hold this position, which is coordinated, co-sponsored by the Library of Congress. And this last slide that I'll show, this should be copied and put in the chat. It provides links to the Library of Congress and its children's literature. It links to collections policies for acquiring children's literature. There's a delightful interview from Anne Sullivan, a children's book cataloger. Then there's a blog on 20 years of children's literature at the Library of Congress. And last, there's a link to the 2021 Diversity in Children's Literature Symposium hosted by Dr. Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress. And now let's turn to our children's literature panel. Today, 3 2021 winners of the Children's Africana Book Award are our panelists for 3 picture books that explore challenges faced by 3 girls, 2 fictional, 1 real and famous. The authors are Tricia Elam Walker, Khalil, and Ekiuwa Aire. As Edward just said, as a panel, these authors will explore the challenges faced by immigrant children living in an America that has little knowledge of their own countries and traditions, and the strategies that a girl living in a long ago kingdom uses to achieve her dreams of becoming a warrior. Central in these 3 stories are the supportive adult characters who help the young protagonists navigate the challenges of their world. To start our discussion with our panel, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Rose Sau Lugano, who will facilitate conversations on these books with their authors. Dr. Lugano is a Swahili language and literature master lecturer at the University of Florida. Her current research is centered around issues of identity formation in the African female Bildungsroman. I don't speak German well, sorry for that pronunciation, but these are coming of age novels, that's what that means. Her other interests include comparative literature, African literature and cultures, children's literature, women's studies, and translation. And so now Dr. Lugano will introduce us to our authors. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon to everybody. I'm going to talk about our 3 award-winning authors, beginning with Tricia Elam Walker. She's an assistant professor of creative writing at Howard University, an award-winning author, an educator, and recovered lawyer. Her first children's book, Nana Akua Goes to School, was published by Random House in June 2020 and won the 2021 Children's Africana Book Award and the 2021 Ezra Jack Keats Writer. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, the Baltimore Sun, Essence, and other publications. And she has provided commentary for NPR, CNN, and BBC, and more. Our second award winner author is Khalil. She is a freelance freelance journalist and author of the Arabic Quilt, An Immigrant Story. It was published in 2020 by Tilbury House. A 2021 NCTE recommended Charlotte Hack Award and Ohiana's 2021 Floyd Peak Honor Book Award, 2021 Notable Social Studies Trade Book, and 2021 CABA winner. Her debut was inspired by real events growing up as an Egyptian American. She holds a Master's of Education with a focus in teaching English as a second language. As a freelance journalist, she's written about numerous Muslim-related issues and has been published by Huffington Post and quoted in Teen Vogue. Our third CABA 2021 award winner is the writer of Idia of Benin Kingdom. Her name is Ekiuwa Aire, and she was born and raised in Benin City, Edo, Nigeria. She moved to England when she was 9, and it was here, away from all she had grown up with, that she discovered her passion for writing. Ekiuwa co-wrote her first book while finishing high school and continued developing her craft while earning a Bachelor of Economics and a Master's of Business Administration. She is passionate about African history and incorporates the richness of many cultures into her books. Now a mother living in Canada, Ekiuwa hopes that her books will help kids develop an appreciation of African history and to value the wisdom and pride that will come from this knowledge. So 2 of these books explore the challenges faced by immigrant children living in an America that has little knowledge of their home countries and traditions. And I think many immigrant children will be able to relate to these books as well as the historical book. Tricia, how does your book reveal the challenges faced by immigrant children in the US?
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here amongst these panelists. In my book, it's actually the child's grandmother who is the immigrant. So it's more about how the child is affected by having an immigrant grandparent. The biggest issues are that Nana Akua is from Ghana and has ethnic markings on her face. The grandmother is the little girl's favorite person in the whole universe, and thus she's very protective of her. I have seen these kinds of things where children often feel they must protect the very people who are supposed to be their protectors. It's a natural feeling from a compassionate person, a compassionate child, even though the person is merely a child and smaller than the person they wish to protect. Often our children don't tell us certain things, not wanting to upset us. The little girl, Zora, is aware, though, how her grandmother is often othered when they are in public. The book discusses a time when she and her grandmother are in the park and she's on the swings when a little boy points at Nana and says, "That lady looks scary." This hurts Zora deeply. Then they go to a restaurant and the server stares so hard at her grandmother that she forgets to bring them an important part of their order. So the idea is to put children in the shoes of Zora. They have adults in their lives they care about, and often during school visits, I ask kids about their own grandparents, and their faces just light up with love. So the hope for me is that they will think twice about how they respond when someone looks or seems different because of skin color, height, weight, religion, gender identity, ability, how they speak, what food they eat. I want, etc. I want to encourage them to be curious, but not dismissive or not deciding it's bad to be different. I've heard far too many stories of children who were teased, bullied, or chastised by other kids for things they couldn't do anything to change and didn't want to. Some of these stories are from my own children as well as my students. These incidents leave deep scars, but I truly believe, as my mother used to say, that children's books can help solve the problems of the world. I also heard from a teacher that she had a student from Ghana who was very, very quiet and seemingly sad for most of the first part of the school year during COVID, and she never spoke up in class on Zoom. But when the teacher read my book to her class and the little girl perked up and paid attention and said that she was from Ghana And she was just amazed that she saw herself in this book. And it confirmed for me how important representation is. It's equally important for children to see themselves and as well as important for other children to normalize those who are not like them at all. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Wow. Now I pose the same question to you, Aya.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, so if anybody has read the Arabic Quilt before, they know the challenges, that there are several challenges in the book, and then many that immigrant children relate to. For one, Kenzie's mom makes her a kofta sandwich, and at another point she makes her the soup. It's called shorbatats, and they don't look very good. I mean, they're not the most beautiful looking food, but she's embarrassed by it, and she forgets her lunchbox at home. Some people ask me, hey, did she purposely forget the lunchbox or did she not? And so I usually let kind of the reader figure that out. So to her horror, her mom shows up with the lunchbox to her classroom, and she's already having problems fitting in. So she walks into the classroom confidently, which she should be confident, and she's visibly Muslim. She has a hijab on, and she talks to her in Arabic. She tells her, hey, Habibti, you forgot your lunchbox, and then the teasing starts. So maybe it's the first time these kids see somebody wearing hijab. Maybe it's the first time they hear somebody speaking Arabic, because I myself grew up in a very small white town in North Dakota, and that was the case. So I was embarrassed to speak Arabic in public. So I used to often just speak to my parents in English, and my own kids now, I try to speak to them mostly in Arabic, but of course, it's just easier for them to speak in English. So there is that challenge. Accents, I know even just growing up, I would be embarrassed by my parents' accents, especially, and then now I realize how important accents are. It just means that you're courageous. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It just, for me now, I always tell my kids, hey, like, don't laugh at, like, sometimes they'll laugh at my parents' accents just for fun, and I tell them, no, don't laugh. It just means that they're courageous, they're brave, they left their home countries and they're here, and it's something that they should be proud of. I think, yeah, that's mostly, those are some of the challenges that are that I did address in the Arabic Quilt. And I do get, like Tricia, also messages from parents and teachers, and they tell me, hey, my kids and my students, they see Arabic words in the story, and we don't have a lot of books with Arabic words, so this is so good. And having that representation on there also is so important. And that is it. That's just some of the themes that are discussed in the Arabic Quilt.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. So again, I ask you this other question, Tricia and Aya. How did the children in your stories bring information about the African countries to their new classmates? You can start with Tricia.
Sure. So in my book, Zora finally tells her grandmother what she's worried about, because it's Grandparents' Day at her school. And while she wants to show her grandmother off, she's very worried about how other children might react to the ethnic markings. Being the wise woman that she is, Nana has an idea. Zora has a quilt on her bed made by Nana that features the Adinkra symbols from the Akan people of Africa, which have been around for hundreds of years and were mostly used by royalty for important events like celebrations and funerals, but are fairly ubiquitous in the African-American community at this point. Nana suggests they bring the quilt to school and teach the class about those symbols and use them to help explain the traditional markings on her face. When they go to school, she lets the children choose their favorite symbol, and then she paints their faces with these symbols, as well as the other grandparents who are there who also choose symbols as well. And I just want to read you a little bit from the book in the section where Nana Akua actually walks around the circle of children and points out the marks on her face and talks to them. And she says, hello, children. I'm sure you've noticed the marks on my face. Has anyone seen anything like them? No, say all the children. Well, these marks were gifts from my parents who are happy and proud that I was born. I am likewise proud to wear them. Most Ghanaian parents don't celebrate in this way anymore, but it was once an important tradition. Zora watches, her eyes wide as cups, as her Nana walks slowly around the circle so everyone can see her face up close. It's interesting, she says, that in this country, I often notice people who put tattoos on their body that have special meanings. Yours are way better than tattoos, a little boy named Theodore says, because they grew up with you. Nana Akua smiles. Why, thank you, young man. And I brought some special makeup so that each of you can have beautiful African symbols on your faces too, the kind that wash off. My expert helper will hold up her quilt, which shows some symbols you can choose from. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can see some of the symbols behind me.
Ah, yes.
Yes, yes. So I think over to you, Laverne.
Yes, I think we should now turn to the historical book, Idia of the Benin Kingdom, who explores the strategies of a girl living in a long ago kingdom. Ekiuwa, can you tell us who Idia is or was?
Sure. Thank you all for having me. I'm honored to be a member of this panel. Who was Idia? Idia was born in the 15th century, and she was the well-known wife to Oba Ozolua and the mother to Oba Esigye, who ruled the Benin Empire between 1504 and 1550. Not much is known about Idia's childhood, but what we do know about her when she became an adult is that her official role in the kingdom before she became a queen was that she was an entertainer. She was a dancer. In fact, she was noticed by Oba Ozolua when she was performing a dance routine during one of the traditional festivals at the time. Another aspect of her history that we know of is that despite being known as a dancer before she entered the palace, she was well-versed in politics, diplomacy, and spirituality. Idia is regarded as playing a significant role in her son's rise and reign and is remembered as a great warrior who fought without fear. To reward and honor her, Oba Ozolua, Oba Esigye created a new position within his court called the Iyoba, or the Queen Mother, which gave her significant political privileges, including a separate residence of her own. Idia was also extremely artistic. She is responsible for many innovations, such as the Akasa dance that is still being used in Benin cultural practices to this day. After Idia's death, her son ordered craftsmen to build bronze heads and masks in his mother's honor, to honor her military achievements and her ceremonial power. These artifacts can be found in museums all over the world to this day. Though Queen Idia is often represented as a warrior, she was not just that. She was also feminine as well. She was a dancer, she was artistic. This dual aspect of her personality tells us that she was extremely interesting. She had all the power, all the skill, and she had a loyal following, and she was extremely beautiful. She was a woman that had it all. That's Queen.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure that children reading the book are interested in the strategies that she used to achieve her goals.
Yes.
So.
In my book, Idia is presented as a persistent little girl who convinces her parents to introduce her to concepts that little girls at the time may not have been typically exposed to. These concepts were politics and spirituality, and this paves the way towards describing what the real life adult Idia did to forever change her kingdom. Historically, the character Idia used her spirituality, diplomacy, and cunning to accomplish her goals. She's regarded as having supernatural prowess and a domineering personality. Before going into the palace, a place she was unfamiliar with, she, along with her parents, sought spiritual help to strengthen her. Then as soon as she entered the palace, she's said to have begun to develop key relationships within the palace staff that further empowered her. In traditional societies such as this, women typically had no say or power. They were there to serve their husbands, take care of their children, or manage other domestic issues. But Idia was different. History has it that she commanded great influence in Oba Zolua's palace, and she knew all the key players and she had knowledge of politics, administration, medicine, spirituality, and she was a vital asset to the kingdom. With this book, we teach girls that even though at the time Idia's problems were that she wanted to be a warrior at a time when there were no female warriors, she was able to achieve her dreams. Little girls today can see themselves in that, and they can see themselves achieving their dreams in their own way that can relate to their daily experiences.
This is terrific. A wonderful role model, definitely,
Thank you.
for children and adults too. You know, this is good. I think though that Aya was about to answer, I think, the question that was put to Tricia concerning how children in your stories bring information to their classmates about the countries that they're from.
Yes, thank you so much. So when I was reading actually Tricia's book, I was so surprised, and I was just so excited that both of our books had really similar themes. Like the quilts, that was such an amazing part of the book. And another part was just the relationship between the grandma and the main character, because that's really part of a lot of, but we're collectivist society in a lot of countries in Africa. So Egypt, it's a collectivist society. People care about each other, people help each other. And so also in Tricia's book, also, I know the main character, she loves her grandma so much. And there's that quilt that connects them as well. And she doesn't want to hurt her grandma's feelings. In the beginning, she was so hesitant, and same as Kenzie, she didn't want to hurt her mom's feelings about the sandwich and the food. And so that's a really important part in some African cultures, especially I want to say North African culture. Also, as I'm speaking about Egypt and Libya and a bunch of other countries. And I do want to read also a part of the story. I was describing my teta's quilt, Kenzie says. When I visited her in Egypt, she gave it to me. My teta only speaks Arabic. Mrs. Hoggins smiles. That is special. I would love to see your quilt. Can I bring it to school, Kenzie? Kenzie asks, sure, bring it tomorrow. And so her teacher also plays an important role here. The next day, Kenzie unfolds her quilt in front of the class. Her heart is pounding. This is my quilt that my teta in Egypt made. That's cool. I want to make a quilt like that, Deshawn says. Maybe we can all make one for our classroom. Mrs. Hagen nods and smiles. On Friday, Mrs. Hagen makes an announcement. I have an exciting project for us all to work on. Kenzie's mom is here to help us make a quilt with all your names in Arabic. As Mama steps forward, Kenzie thinks how beautiful she looks. So she's finally realizing that. Shukran for welcoming me here, Mama says. Kenzie and I will write down your names in Arabic and you will copy your name on your own quilt pieces. And again, also Arabic, the Arabic language, also that's an important part of the story. And I really wanted to emphasize the importance of it. Molly is not enthusiastic about the project. Who cares about Arabic? We live in America. My mom says we should only speak English. In response, Mrs. Hoggins starts writing words on the board: algebra, coffee, lemon, sugar. Does anyone know what these words have in common? They come from Arabic words, Kenzie whispers. Mrs. Hoggins nods. Learning other languages besides the one we grow up with helps make the world a friendlier place. We can speak non-English languages and still be American. So this part here is really, honestly, it's probably something the main character is going to remember for the rest of her life, because the teacher here is empowering Kenzie, and she's realizing, yeah, Arabic, my language is really cool. So I really like this part of the story. So that is that's an information that I really hope students and readers will learn to learn about. And also something else, I know it's really funny. When I was younger, I used to tell people that I'm from Egypt, and people would ask me, do you live in a pyramid, and do you come to school on a camel? So that's also another thing. It's another information about an African country that I want children to know about, that no, I don't live in a pyramid. No, I don't go to school on a camel. So that's just a reminder also, again, that Egypt is in Africa, because that's also something people forget, especially kids. They say, oh, you're from Africa, and I have to explain to them, yes, Egypt is a country in North Africa. And then again, so Arabic, there's a lot of speaking points that this story has, and I really like it because there is an educational guide on my website, and it's free, and it talks about these issues. So there's Arabic, there's geography, and there's just a lot of discussion points that you can make from this.
Yes, I can see this, and I'm thinking you may not have ridden to school on a camel, but there probably are children who do, in other places, a camel or a moped, or just various things. But it's just broadening to experience these different cultures. But we should also hear from Rose on this topic. And so, Rose, one of your specialties is female representation in children's books by female writers. And can you talk to us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity to talk about my research in a short while. Yes, my research was on the African female Bildungsroman. The Bildungsroman is a word I decided to adopt because novel of development is too wordy, so I just adopted it. Not that I speak German, I don't. So it's just that it was convenient for me to use it. So it's the novel of development, the novel of coming of age. And so in my doctoral studies, I looked at the female Bildungsroman, in which I examined 6 novels written by male authors from Africa and 6 novels written by female authors from Africa. I looked at novels in Swahili language and English language. So I was looking at them and comparing to see what are the authors seeing as factors that inform the formation of the character of the girl child. These novels all had female characteristics, and they were Bildungsromans, novels of development. So a little bit about the description of the Bildungsroman. It is a type of novel that seeks to examine the cause of development of the life of an individual from childhood and as they progress in life to adulthood. So usually you'll see the story begin with a child at home, born, and different factors coming in to help the formation of this person's life. So the different stages of life are supposed to mold the character, enabling him or her to attain a reasonable role in society. It is believed that the reader, that's why a lot of stories of children are young people growing up. So the belief was that the reader will be following the personal development of the protagonist, of his or her own personal formation will be shaped by what they observe in the book they're reading. So the story will shape, impact, or inform their own personal development as they read it. So the importance of this genre in informing character development was recognized in Germany, that in 1820, they adopted, according to Martin Swalles in 1978 book, he says it was adopted as the national genre because they wanted all stories of children to be written that way, so that it is a tool that can help children become good citizens. But in those times, the earlier Bildungsromans were all about male development. That's why when you think of Huckleberry Finn, all those old English novels, which are Bildungsromans, are always a male character. So women in their domesticated confinement were not found subjects worthy of examination. So women were not written about at all. And if they were written about, like in these novels that I looked that were focusing on the early 70s, early 80s in Africa, they were written by men. The first pioneer female Bildungsroman, by female, I mean female character, having a female character. So the male Bildungsroman will be the one that has a male character. So the pioneer ones were written by male writers. Why male writers in Africa? Because male writers had the opportunity to access colonial education before the women. Women were domesticated because what the colonialists did was impose Victorian value system in the African continent. So women begin appearing in the late, maybe early 1980s, and they begin to write contesting the misrepresentation of male writers and also self-representing themselves. So a lot of them are critiquing what male said. For example, I will just pick one topic, polygamy. You look at texts written by male writers, polygamy is portrayed as something that worked, and the women worked together. They were friends, they loved each other. But then 1980s, Mariam Abba comes along. Mariam Abba is a writer from Senegal, and she writes about polygamy from her own personal experience, and it's a different picture altogether. So she begins to correct how women themselves feel about polygamy itself. So in African literatures, you actually have two writing traditions, the male writing tradition and the female writing tradition, where women are portraying different aspects of their own personal lives. Yeah, so again, you can imagine the male and female Bildungsroman when we know that the socialization and experiences of boys and girls are different. So when the Bildungsroman, in the Bildungsroman that focuses on the girl may want to aspire to be something different from what the society wants. So she's always going against the grain and fighting, and many a times, even in the pioneer Bildungsroman, the girl who rebelled against early child marriage, who rebelled against being confined to certain coming of age rituals, was most times ran away from home. And what happened? She became a prostitute. So you had the negative images of women more than the positive images, because whereas for the boy, even going out and being friendly with girls built his reputation up. For the woman, it did the negative. She began to grow downwards. It didn't make her become a better character. So again, I'm saying that to show that even today, you still see a lot of portrayals that portray women in very negative terms. Yeah, so the society has, in most cases, is structured in ways that favors boys' development. They are portrayed as adventurous, brave, strong, while the girls are presented as passive, obsessed with beauty, and sometimes lacking in intelligence. Sometimes if the girl is intelligent, then she's an exception, something like that. But I'm thankful that that trend is changing, and I commend our writers for giving our girls such agency within your texts. Yeah, so let me quote a little bit about somebody who has written about this phenomena. Abel et al. In 1983, and I quote, says, while male protagonists struggle to find a hospitable context in which to realize their aspirations, the female protagonist must frequently struggle to voice any aspirations whatsoever. For women, social options are often so narrow that they preclude exploration of her social setting. I finish the quote. So I will talk a little bit about the outcome of my research. I found out that the male Bildungsroman was more popular than the female. So pioneer literatures, even in the West, you see more of the male character formation novels than girls. Girls become much, much later as topics because of women beginning to write and present their own perspectives. Also, I discovered that pioneer writers of female novels were male, of course, and they portrayed women in negative forms. For example, the 3 novels that I examined, 3 of them I mentioned were written by male characters, male writers, sorry. In all of them, the 3 novels, the girls became prostitutes because one was escaping early child marriage. So she ran into the city, she had no skill, she became a prostitute. The other one was escaping discrimination because she was not very light-skinned like her parents. She was a little dark because the Swahili culture where I come from, the Swahilis are they are mixed race. Mixed in that they're being on the coast, they have a lot of intermarriage with Indians and Arabs. So you have this identity crisis going on there. Then the other one was running away from being cloistered because being Islamic, she was supposed to be confined, but the TV was showing her a different picture. So she also flees from home, ends up in the city and becomes a prostitute. On the other hand, the female writers, they focused more on the mental capacity of the girls instead of their physical and sexual qualities. So they emphasized the ability for the girls to aspire for greater things outside the confinements of their society. So for example, they delayed love relationships because they want the girls to go to school and excel and achieve their ambitions. So even the solutions they give to the girls is completely different from the writers of the male writers. And many of the African women writers have actually adopted the Bildungsroman genre as their type of novel because it allows them to factor in their own personal development, their own experiences. So most of them, their texts are not completely fictional. They are semi-autobiographical. For example, one is called Nervous Conditions. Nervous Conditions is written by a writer called Tsitsi Dangaremba. She's from Zimbabwe. These are just examples I'm giving you. There's one, The Bride Prize, written by Buchi Emecheta from Nigeria. And Memoirs of a Woman Doctor, written by Nawal El Sadawi from Egypt. And also So Long a Letter, written by Mariam Abba, which I mentioned earlier on. Mariam Abba is from Senegal. So I come back to a little bit on children's literature. Children's picture books have a long-term influence on children's development, especially their concept of themselves and others, while at the same time communicating cultural and social norms of their society.
Okay, well, let me just thank you for enlightening us, and I hope that some of that information can go into the chat, the titles that you were mentioning, you know, So Long a Letter, Nervous Conditions. This is very good information for us and ties in with our writers.
Yes.
We've heard from our panelists, so now we should open up the conversation to our audience, and we would like to hear from you. And so I hope that you will submit your questions if you will put them in the Q&A, and then we will answer those. So let us look in the Q&A. And Rose, can you help me with this? Let's see, there's a question about Benin bronzes being returned by some countries. I think last week I was listening to a show and they brought that up. So that's one question. Ekiuwa, well, would any of you have anything to to say about that. And also we should look in, that was in the Q&A, and I'm wondering, there are a lot more questions in the chat.
Yes, I see one too. So how does each author experience the role of the illustrator in bringing their stories to life? That's an excellent question.
Okay. Let's start with that one.
Okay, well, I'll just jump in and say, you know, most of the time, at least in my experience, which is not very broad, the publisher selects the illustrator, and there's not too much contact between the writer and the illustrator. And so in my case for Nana Akua, I was very fortunate because the illustrator that they asked to work on my book was someone whose work I already admired. And actually I had a print in my house. I wish I could show it to you. It's an unsigned print, so I didn't even know it was hers. But once I realized it was hers, I was like, ah, we were meant to be together. And so she was gracious enough to ask me if there are any things that, you know, were important to me. And I said that I really wanted the grandmother's face to be warm and open, and that I wanted the little girl to have natural hair, and that I wanted a diverse classroom. And she did all of that and much more. I feel like she breathed life into my characters that just were living in my head. And I was so honored and pleased to work with her because she had done much good work before and had been rewarded for it. She had lots of awards, and the fact that she, you know, was willing to work on my book was a great honor for me.
Okay, that's very good. Aya, what about you and your illustrator?
Yeah, same
How
also
wonderful.
as yeah, same as Tricia. Also, the publisher found a debut illustrator like myself, and again, I didn't know the illustrator. Well, I didn't know the illustrator, but I did at one point after the publisher found the illustrator. They did ask for feedback, and there are a few things that I did ask for. It was important for me for the illustrator to have this picture right here on the very top. It's an iconic photo from the Egyptian uprising, and I really wanted it to be in there because it's so important and it can lead to a lot of discussions. And also in the very end, where the names are hung up, this is actually my handwriting. So it was really nice for the illustrator to write those down in the illustrations. Those are kind of little special touches that she added. And I think she did a really good job. So she did a really good job. She's debut and she was open to changes. I know sometimes it's hard. Nowadays, a lot of publishers have been trying to find like illustrators from the same background relating to the story. So, but she did a wonderful job. She was an amazing, amazing illustrator.
It just occurred to me an illustrator is also a translator.
Yeah,
Taking your,
exactly.
your thought, your emotions, your words, and making something, of that.
And
So
they're
yes.
storytellers as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had a different experience because I self-published my books. And so I had the job of finding an illustrator, but I knew exactly what I wanted to have. I knew who I was writing my books for, who they're my kids. And I know the type of illustrations that they're looking for, dreamy characters that celebrate the history and the culture without being, with enough detail. And so I think I interviewed about 15 illustrators in looking for someone to illustrate my book, because I was looking for someone who saw what I was looking for. You can read a page in the book and you can interpret it in a different way. And the way you interpret it is your version of the story, and that's fine. But I was looking for someone who saw the story in the way that I saw the story. And this was the page that she submitted to me. Uh-huh. And as soon as I saw this page, I fell in love with her. Like Aya mentioned, she is not of the background, but she was willing to learn. And we both learned together, because even though I am from the background, I didn't live 500 years ago. And so there was a lot of research that went and rework that went into this book. And I think my illustrator did a fabulous job.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, I'm looking again in the chat. there's a question. Your books are published in the diaspora. Can they speak to or engage children in Africa as an audience? Or are they mainly for children in the diaspora?
My hope is that they're for everyone. And I actually had an experience where one of the schools that I did a virtual visit at had a connection with a school in Ghana. And so she was able to, of course, there were a lot of technical difficulties with making the connection, but for a few minutes, we got to see the school classroom. We got to see the kids in Ghana. They had read the book. They were excited about it. So it was wonderful. It was brief, as I said, but it made me feel like, okay, this could happen. And I have also sent some copies of the book over to some libraries in Africa because of someone I met on this CABA, one of the other panels we did. Someone reached out to me after the panel and said that she had opened some libraries in Ghana and wanted to take the books there. And I was like, well, then I'm going to donate some more so, more kids can have access to it. So that's my little small experience with it, but I trust that they are, sought after everywhere.
Okay, very good. What about in Egypt?
Okay, go ahead.
No.
I would add that I don't fully agree that the books are for children in the diaspora. They're diverse books, but I think they're for all kids here in this part of the world, as well as kids in Africa. So I think that the books would do well everywhere in the world. And even here, it's good for kids of all cultures to learn about the African culture. And I have had author visits with kids in India, in the UK, in Africa, all over the world, and all kids love the culture and the story.
And so just because it's about Africa does not mean it's only for Africans or people of African descent.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Aya, what about in Egypt? How is your book perceived?
I don't know. I went to Egypt over the summer and I asked a couple of places if they're carrying it, but they said no. There was just no, I was only there for a week, so there was not enough time to plan anything. But I really do hope in the future, I do visit in the summer every couple of years. I really do hope to have an event there. So that would be really nice.
This is a little off topic, but because you're visiting and because I just asked about your book, I was wondering about bookstores, whether your book could be carried in a bookstore that's bilingual. And what about the book buying public and receiving the book, or libraries?
Are you asking if the book can be bilingual?
Well, no, the book is in English, but I guess I was asking about the book buying public, or the book being in libraries, or for children, for accessibility. And so it's a garbled question. Sorry, sorry about that. But I was just thinking about how books do reach children, how they reach families. And there are times when you buy the book, there are times when you see the book in a library.
So the publisher, that's their job to reach out to bookstores and libraries. But also it does help when readers and just friends and family, they can also request the book at their library. And also, I'm not sure if your books are on Hoopla Digital. There's audio. This Arabic Quilt is on a video and audio also. So that's another also really great option. I've had teachers tell me that their students watch it. So that's also another great way and accessible for many.
And word of mouth, I find is just amazing. It really makes a big difference in exposure. And I'm sorry, but I have to go and teach a class. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you for being with us today. Thanks so much. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Yes, so there is a question, the last question. Do the authors think of their books as Bildungsroman? For children, I would think they are, because they're showing some development of some thought, because development is not necessarily from growing a young child. Sometimes it is development spiritually. They're evolving in their thought life, thinking about themselves. So even Aire's character fitting in through the quilt. And I would think the character in Zora's book, in Tricia's book, Zora, finding a connection from the tattoos and the face marks, the connection. And I think even Ekiuwa's story, the historical connection that women did have these powerful roles is important. It is another way of learning. A bildungsroman can also be a mental, spiritual growth.
And okay, the question about the Benin bronzes has been asked again, and it's stated it's for Akua. The Benin bronze question was for you, maybe because of the historic character.
What is the question?
Yeah. It is.
How do I feel about the Benin bronzes?
Okay. The fact that they're being returned to some countries. I hear about the bronzes going to Great Britain, but they also were taken by other European countries. And so how does that relate to your historic character?
I think it's about time that those bronzes are returned. And I think that one of the reasons that I wrote my book was to also provide shed light on the fact that there are these artifacts that are all over the world that have histories that belong to people who value them, and to put a face to the ownership of these artifacts. My opinion is simple, that I am looking forward to them being returned, and I'm following the story closely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just looking in the chat to see if there's anything else to bring up. And I see we've received a prompt to conclude today's program. I thank you for coming today, our panelists and our audience. And if you have additional questions at the Library of Congress, you can send your questions to our Ask a Librarian service. If you have a question about the Children's Africana Book Award, you could address those questions to Brenda Randolph, and her email address is listed here. Please do contact us. We would enjoy hearing from you. And thank you so much for coming. Goodbye.